Before we begin, I just wanted to give you a trigger warning as we will be discussing death, violence, and loss in video games, including some emotionally heavy story moments and references to body horror. If that's something you'd prefer to skip today, please take care of yourself and give this episode a miss.
Now we have a replacement horse, which doesn't have a name, and it's just not the same because it's not Sora. It's very sad.
It's a really good narrative mechanic for adding emotion into the story, whilst at the same time having your player character slicing through everyone that comes in their path. It's a big conflict, isn't it?
It's easy for death to be cheapened in games. It needs to fit in the narrative in order for it to really matter.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. I'm your host for today, I'm Jem, and I'm here with my friends Alex and Matt. So before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gaming the system for some exclusive content, or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to Gaming the System. I'm Jem and I'm with Alex and Matt. Today I was inspired to talk about the issue of death in games. I don't know if either of you two have been watching Celebrity Traitors. They start their series by taking all the celebrities to a cemetery. There are graves for each celebrity, and they are expected to dig their own grave to get a shield which will protect them from being murdered that day. For anyone who doesn't know how it works, the Traitors is a game where 3 people are selected to be traitors. Everyone else is faithful, and each night the traitors murder, in inverted commas, a member of the faithful, and so they get kicked out. And then every night there is also a round table where everyone gets to quiz each other and accuse each other of being traitors or defend themselves as being faithful. So it's a very oppositional game, basically a murder mystery, sort of murder in the dark, really. But it was this idea of taking people to the cemetery and making out that you were going to bury them, I don't know, alive or whatever. There's another episode where they dress up in funeral gear, and there's a lot around death, and there's this theme of murder all the way through. And it got me thinking about how, as a society, we treat death as a form of entertainment and what happens when we do that. Can't remember who the quote is from, but there is that quote about death and taxes being the only 2 things in life that are guaranteed. So death is very much a part of life. Obviously, it's something that we generally want to avoid, and it's shocking and challenging when it happens for real. And then you juxtapose that with turning it into a form of entertainment, an entertaining theme. In my opinion, this doesn't happen more than within the games world, because so many of our games have death in them in some form or other. It's a fundamental mechanic within the game genre. So I thought we would see if we can unpack some of these issues and see what we can get our heads around. We're going to do 2 episodes on this, shorter ones. And so this first half, I want to look more at death as a mechanic and as a narrative tool within games. What I'd like to ask you both is, when we talk about death in games, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you? Is it the story of the character or the story within the game, or is it more the mechanical, oh my God, you died moment, the frustration that might come with that?
For me, at the moment, it's definitely the former, but I think that's to do with the game I'm playing at the moment, which is Ghost of Tsushima. And we've got to a part in the game that's very sad. Basically, the start of Act 3. And because it could be spoilery, I'll say. Spoilers if you've not played. You've played it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Gem, if you want to play, it is a bit spoiler. But basically, at the start of Act 3, your horse, who you've had with you for the entirety of Act 1 and 2, dies. And it actually was really difficult to watch. It was a whole cutscene, like a 5-minute cutscene. And basically your horse, whatever you choose to name it, you've got like 3 options, and we'd chosen Sora, which means the sky in Japanese, I think. And it was a lovely white horse shot by arrows from the Mongols. And he tried to get us to safety in the north of the island, where we'd been exiled after arguing with our uncle. He unfortunately passed away on the road in the cold, in the snow. And then it kind of fades to black and comes back, and you're next to the grave with the location, grave of a loyal friend. And it's very emotional. And I did not want to continue playing the game after that point because I didn't have Sora with me. It was not the same. So we had no horse for a while, and now we have a replacement horse, which doesn't have a name, and it's just not the same because it's not Sora. It's very sad. So yeah, that took a lot of my thoughts when you posed that question to us. I think definitely at the moment my headspace is very much death as part of the story, and the impact that the death of a character you've spent a long time with within the game world can do to impact the story and your experience of the story. But yeah.
Imagine how long it would take to bury a horse.
A very long time.
That's where you went,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, I could go into more glib things about it, but yes, and talk about it more when we do our deep dive at some point. I've been thinking about it more mechanically, purely because the mechanical deaths happen more regularly than actual narrative deaths, permanent deaths. It's another area of the human condition that games need to make something that is unrealistic, like dying over and over again, make that make sense within the game that you're playing. And so like Little Nightmares and Reanimal we've been playing over the weekend, you die over and over and over again with that. It's funny because it's us failing. I have to think back to, there have been plenty of deaths in gaming that have really affected me and are really powerful. But I think it's easy for death to be cheapened in games. When you go, oh no, this person's died, it needs to fit in the narrative in order for it to really matter. I've played Spider-Man 2, played twice in a row. Then I went back and played Spider-Man 1 twice in a row. Then I played Spider-Man Miles Morales twice in a row. And now I am back playing Spider-Man 2 again, this time on PC. And I've finally cracked how to set the game up so it looks the best at the highest frame rates. Mental! Because how impossible it is to sort out how graphics works. But I've nailed it down, touch wood. And even when so there's a bit where you think Peter's dead. And you know, obviously he can't be dead because he's the main character. But that's part of the skill of it, is making you feel something and then it not feel cheap. So when it does it, and then the way that they don't die is part of the narrative, but you building up relationships of people and then killing them in an impactful way. It's a lot harder to write good deaths than it is to make than pithy mechanical deaths. So, yeah, my first thought is the mechanics of it.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Matt. I mean, that was my first thoughts when I think about death in games. When I was looking at this topic, I separate them into two very clearly and quickly in my head. You know, there's the storyline, and people might die in that, and that's separate from the sort of mechanical game deaths. I mean, it wasn't until I started thinking about it in terms of this conversation that I recognised how distinct my concept of those two ways of viewing death within the game world was. It is a really fundamental part of gaming, how a game works, how a game challenges us, and how we create characters and create the storyline within the technical and mechanical aspect of the game. And I was wondering how you think about that and what that says about our relationship with failure and sort of finality, the way that death happens and then you respawn and then you go again and then you might die and you respawn and you go again. This is such a fundamental part of gaming.
It serves a function, so you can't just have... So a problem with a game, you reach a point where you've screwed up or whatever the stakes are. You need to be able to go back and reset to a previous point. And deaths is just a really simple way around that. There's a lot of games with combat. Some games, like the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring's game, they actually make death part of the narrative and gameplay, which is really interesting. And yeah, I think it's so disconnected, the deaths in gaming. It's so just completely divorced from the reality of death. I don't think it ever occurs to me when I'm playing.
Because it's like a refresh, isn't it? Unless you play with permadeath, in which case there are. But then also I was thinking about this question in terms of like how often in games the protagonist character is just killing hundreds and hundreds of enemies. And I don't think of it like as they were real deaths because you become desensitized to it. And it represents your progression through the game. You see it as a marker of progress more than anything else.
Yeah, it's been very, very, very rare that games make me feel the weight of actually killing people. Because I'm sure you get a trophy in Hitman when you kill 2,500 people. I don't know whether that matters necessarily, whether we'd benefit from the random NPCs that we kill, whether...
Because I remember you talking about how the NPCs would name each other in The Last of Us, and how that changed how you felt about it, which was quite interesting. I remember in the first of the modern trilogy, or I suppose, it's the most modern trilogy of Tomb Raider, when she's on the Japanese island, and essentially there's a scene where Lara kills for the first time. She shoots somebody, and it is quite dramatic. They tried to make it impactful and make it mean something, but then 5 minutes later, it's like your average game, you're just killing people and there's no sort of reaction to it. So they did try, but then they kind of just sort of scrapped it immediately after and were like, oh, it's fine now, it's normal. It didn't quite have the impact that perhaps they would have wanted, the developers, the writers.
Yeah, because when you choose to go, we're going to try and be dramatic and realistic with this bit, that you can't just turn that tone on and off. You can't go, oh, we're going to have a bit about her being really sad that she's killed someone for the first time, and then turn into your average action experience. If you're going to have the process of someone getting used to killing things, that needs to be an arc with the conclusion at the end that goes, there wasn't another way to go through this. Yeah. Sometimes there isn't another way, which means that I know that I can kill now, and that there'll be times in the future where there won't be a choice. And then you can explore that, but then that has to be at the core, because that's a character thing. How different people react to killing someone for the first time is a fascinating character thing.
Definitely.
So you have to choose whether that's actually going to be part of the game that you want to play or not. A good example is, and whether it doesn't have to be the main thing of the game, it can be an undercurrent thing, like with Atreus in God of War, when he kills a man for the first time and he's just utterly like in shock, and Kratos tells him to close his heart to it, and then has to talk him into carrying on, and he goes, oh, okay. And then Kratos goes, we'll go home then, never mind. And then that's what gets Atreus to go, oh, no, we've got something to do, we've got to go. And then you go on from there. That is a part of Atreus's character. And then later on, when he gets all evil and kills one of the sons of Thor, and Kratos is like, what the hell did you do that for? And Atreus is like, oh, it doesn't matter. He wasn't as strong as us. And then it has to be, death can be extremely powerful. It's the one thing we all have in common, is that we're going to die at some point. And you're either up for wrestling with that and the benefits that come with it as well, because it's automatic built-in tension and stakes and everything. But you've got to be, one, to do it, you've got to be a skilled writer to do it on the best of days. But if you half-arse it, which is what a lot of games do, really, yeah, it's just not as compelling.
Yeah, there's a bit of a conflict there, isn't there, from a game design perspective. It's a really good mechanic for adding challenge to a game. It's a really good narrative mechanic for adding emotion into the story. But those two aspects can clash because you can't maintain one and have the other. Murder or death is so important, whilst at the same time having your player character slicing through everyone that comes in their path. It's a big conflict, isn't it?
It's very frustrating when you and your partner will shoot their way through hundreds of enemies through the campaign, and then, like in The Last of Us, we've survived going through this city and all these things, and then if you burst through a door and your mate gets shot in the head, and you go, that's just narrative bollocks, that is. Because what happened when we were running away from the wolves and all those clickers attacked, we had to drive fucking through the forest, and we survive all that, but now when it's narratively convenient, it happens. It robs so much weight of it. Why did they run through that door? It feels like there was no other way. And for this, there was no way to save it.
Thinking more about when your character dies, is there an emotional difference between dying in a game like Mario, XCOM, or any of those games, and dying in something that maybe has either permadeath or has considerable disadvantages when you die?
A game where death was the critical part of the narrative was Returnal, which is where you're on this planet it says it's procedurally generated, but I'm sure there are 4 environments that are the same, and then it just puts them in random order. So I was a bit disappointed with it, but it was successful. Every time you die, it takes you right back to the start and then resets everywhere that you went through. So when you die, it doesn't matter how far you get, it takes you right back to the ship you crashed in. I played it for a bit and then got a bit fed up with it and looked at the plot summary. Your goal is to get off the planet. At some point, if you get to that bit, you get your ship, fly back to Earth, you live your life, and then have this family and everything, and then live your whole life. And then you die peacefully of old age, and then you wake up in the ship again. And that is terrifying. That's the sort of Black Mirror stuff that utterly horrifies me. The idea of living your entire life thinking you've escaped and then it being ping right back to that bit of that loop. And
So really what you're saying is that it wasn't the death that was traumatic or emotionally challenging, it was the coming back to life in that scenario.
There's an episode of South Park where Butters, he does something that basically means that the entire universe ceases to exist and it's just him on a blank page. And he goes, oh, no, I want to bring the universe back. And then it puffs back into existence. But this is very existential stuff that I think about. Is it the same universe that blinked out? Or is it a universe rebuilt? Is it like pressing undo on a computer? Is it the reality from Butters' perspective? Even if you click it back, it's not the same thing. That idea of there's something like the loss of something going away. There's a fabulous game that I've been playing recently that one or both or either of you have also been playing, where I could talk about this forever. But I have to wait to do it and hold all to myself. I am glad that Jem came up with this topic because I wanted to do it as well. It's very easy to get sucked into existentialism.
What about you, Alex?
It's a funny one, isn't it, really? I was trying to think about how emotional I get when my character dies. I think it's more frustration if I'm finding a particular part of a game challenging. The closest I've come to it, like a Souls-like, is probably the Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor games. When you die, you have to go back and get your XP or whatever it is. You have to go back and get it, or you will lose the progress for leveling up your character.
Okay. You have to go back and re-earn it, or you have to go...
You have to go back to where you died.
Yeah.
And the
So
person
you'll have...
who killed you.
Exactly, yeah. So you have to pick the enemy that killed you. So you kind of respawn at essentially a bonfire, but it's like a forced meditation point. If you die again while going to get it, you permanently lose whatever you've collected. That brought about more of a weight to dying, in terms of a challenge. But I think in terms of emotions, I don't become so emotionally attached to those types of deaths because they're a natural part of the game's mechanics. Like we've said, we're talking about mechanics, obviously, in this particular episode. So it's more of seeing that as either a barrier to progression or just something that's going to give you a fresh, clean slate and you try again. In some games, every time you die, you've learned a little bit more about how to do better next time for a platforming challenge. If you miss a jump, you come back, you're like, right, I'll try it this way. And then you do it and you make it through. So you can see it from kind of all different perspectives, really. But the deaths that mean the most emotionally are definitely more story-based, or with a game like What Remains of Edith Finch, the death of the protagonist comes as quite an interesting particular part of that whole narrative because you don't necessarily expect it. So the whole game has been about death and the death of Edith's family members. So it's really cleverly done, that one.
Yeah.
And that one was really emotional, definitely. But again, that's a very narrative-heavy game, so it's not quite the same.
I was thinking about games where permadeath is actually a genuine situation, and there aren't very
There's
many
not very
of
many,
them.
no.
XCOM is one that comes up, but I've not actually played XCOM, so I can't speak to that. But I'm playing Valheim at the moment, and when you die, it's not massively traumatic, but it can be quite challenging if you're in a strange place. When you die, you drop all of your gear where you died, and then you need to go back and get it because it's taken a long time to make all of that stuff. There is a motivation for you to want to go back and collect your body. So dying in a strange place, like right out in the middle of an ocean or right near difficult things to kill or difficult to get to places, is really stressful. And there have been times where it's been like, oh my gosh, I don't want to die here. Last time that happened, I was like, oh, I'll go and get the bodies. Then I died another 5 times trying to retrieve my body. I just basically left a big long line of bodies between me and the nearest safe point. That put some meaning into the whole thing because it became increasingly frustrating. The other game that came to mind is actually RimWorld. I don't know if either of you have played that. It's so much fun, very technical, and it's a little builder game. The whole point is to tell a story of survivors on this planet. And the idea is that the game will provide you with ways to survive. So if almost all of your people die, new people will arrive at some point to help you carry on. The encouraged way to play is not to save and reload when things go wrong, and is to allow the story of the game and the story of your survivors to flow in a natural way, which is great and definitely puts a real edge on it. But it's also can be really, really stressful because, again, it's about your progress. You've made all this progress with this person or your base. You send your people out somewhere and they die. And suddenly your base has no one who can cook, no medic, or no one who can build things. It becomes a whole different challenge within the game that has been caused as a result of these characters dying. I suppose that is permadeath for that one character. It's not permadeath for your game. It still creates tension around death. Death is a final thing.
I'm just remembering talking about XCOM, the games where you're in charge of NPCs and you send them on missions. If they die, that's your responsibility. XCOM has that, and Valkyria Chronicles has that. I really felt it in that. It was a fabulous turn-based game. Some of the Assassin's Creed games, when you start having assassins who can come in and you basically call them in to assassinate people for you and come and join you in fights. Another really impactful one for me is Attack on Titan. There's a video game version of it, and it's awesome. Completely captures everything about it. So I've watched the entire series, so I know what the story is for it all. And when you're in battle, you've got allies who are fighting and killing the Titans as well. Most of them are just normal cadets. They're not anything special. If one of them gets grabbed by a Titan, you can go and save them before the timer runs out. I go and try and save that person every time. And when I fail to save them, that really upsets me, because there's something about being eaten alive, but that just rubs me the wrong way. It's like with zombie things, there's just something unbearable about that happening to someone. That's when you've got the rank and file soldiers, where to get you to care about stopping what you're doing and going to try and rescue one of them, or trying to make sure that everyone survives a battle. In order to win, some of us are going to have to lose. That's tricky.
If you're going to make an omelette, you have to break a few eggs.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.